Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How is everybody doing today? Of course, this is being filmed on our Discord. Of course, the link will be in the description. And let's just get right into our introductions for today. Of course, you guys know me. I am the absolutely cunning face that you see on social media every day. But these individuals, I would like to go through the panel, introduce every single one of them. All right, so let's start with Fahim. Fahim,
Hello, guys.
Go over your name, any socials that you have, your age, your marital status, and just you as a person.
Hi guys, assalamu alaikum. My name is Fahim, and I'm also a TikTok content creator. So let's start my username.
Would you like to shout yourself out?
Well, yeah. If you guys have TikTok, you could follow me at fans.a. I'm pretty sure you're gonna put it on top of the screen or something. For
Yeah, you can put it on the screen if you want me to. I mean, I can.
yeah. Just copy and paste the username, and yeah, I'll just make a side of content. I'm a guy who's 16 years old, goes to college, not married, but inshallah, 4 wives of the line, don't worry. Yeah, that's all it.
All right, and that's everything you want to get out there?
Yep.
All right, let's go to Dafriz. Obviously, you don't have to use your real name if you don't want to, but just go over the exact same things that the brother went out.
Assalamu alaikum. I go by Salam. I'm 24. I'm from Canada. I'm a revert of about 6 months or so. I'm working on getting married. There's something in the works, inshallah. And I have a TikTok. It goes by Salam.
All right, and then we have Ness. I can't pronounce your name. Can you pronounce your name for us, sister?
Nesquittle.
Nesquittle?
All right. So my name is Sophia. I'm 18 years old. I've been a revert for about 4 years. I'm single, but inshallah, I will get married soon. Maybe not this year, but soon. I'm an engineering student, and
MashaAllah.
my Instagram is Fia Midwest. So FEA Midwest, and yeah, that's me.
A topic I really wanted to cover was what gives us more rights, Islam or the Western ideologies. Now, what I mean by Western ideologies is almost a libertarian set of rules, so a doctrine basically that's applied to society. So if we're looking at the laws of a government as an example, when comparing that to the Sharia, what gives us more rights at the end of the day? Now, of course, I want to go through the table here on what gives us more rights, Islam or Western ideology, aka government rules. Does anybody want to speak on this matter?
So being that I'm from the US and I was raised with a lot of Western ideology, I do personally feel a lot more, free, through Islam. Like there's a lot of things that you're taught as a young girl in America that, might not necessarily protect you, but, it's just because that's the way things are supposed to be. Like in Islam, of course, women, we are protected in so many ways.
I think the West gives you more, like, quote unquote, sort of visible freedom, but not necessarily a freedom that's good for you or good for women, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially with a lot of laws right now and bills trying to be passed.
Yeah.
So, looking from Islamic perspective and giving rights, what kind of defines the freedoms that we get? Is it the fact that we make our own laws, or is it the fact that we get our laws from a creator?
I think at the end of the day, I think we've all realized here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I don't think humans know best. I know that the life that I lived before Islam, I made a lot of terrible decisions. I think that women in general make a lot of emotional decisions. And Islam is just so logical and so reasonable.
Oh yeah, that's definitely fair to say. And of course, when we're talking about what gives us more rights, we often get into the topic of marriage. So those who might not know the marriage rules of Islam, or even the roles the roles that both of us are meant to go into as males and females. Now, when we're talking mostly from an Islamic perspective, the men are the protectors and the providers of women, and this is a set rule. This is a completely set rule. Now, how deep does that go? Basically, it means that as a man, I'm supposed to protect and provide. Now, the way I see providing, and this is why I say I can't get married today. I can't get married today because as someone who is trying to provide something to somebody, I'm trying to provide financially, I'm trying to provide physically, I'm trying to provide with a significant amount of more knowledge. That's why I say right now, I'm not in the position at all to get married to somebody, because I find that I can't fulfill someone financially, physically, nor can I fulfill someone Islamically intelligent, basically. So I can't lead somebody. When I feel like I can lead somebody, that's when I feel like I can truly get into a position where I can get married. Now, when talking specifically of the roles, does everybody here at least know or want to share any specific knowledge on the marriage roles of Islam?
There's like a superstition that arranged marriages or um stuff like forced marriages are, you know, within like Asian communities are very normal. And of course within a Muslim community I've heard that you know, if you could just without the will of the both parties, or like both the future spouse, or the future wife or the future husband, they, you know, they would be like, or what you say, they would be like more forced into marriage. Like they would be like um you know, forming an agreement. They'll be like, you know, it's just up to the parents and not up to the people who are actually getting married. First of all, that's considered a haram, because, you know, it is said that both parties have to agree mutually with each other that, you know, if they do like each other based on deen or akhlaq as in, like, you know, your characteristics. If both parties do like each other, then the parents are known as facilitators, or like the people who would facilitate the marriage, or or be the witnesses of marriage. So yeah, that's basically one of the rules.
Mm-hmm. Now, coming from a position of not being married and being a revert of 7 months, what do you guys think is better? Do you think that it is better to get an arranged marriage, or to sort of meet somebody, talk to them, then talk to their father, and then you proceed to set up the marriage?
So I might be a little bit more liberal on this, you know, being that I'm from the West, but I would prefer to, you know, meet someone, fall in love, you know, get to know them, and then, you know, have them talk to my father, maybe me meet their mother, and, you know, go through that naturally rather than have someone else set it up for me. Because I want to make sure that I actually love this person, you know. I don't want to just be in a marriage and be like, oh my God, I don't love you. I want it to be something that where we can grow together, we can, you know, worship Allah together, and, you know, have beautiful children who, you know, have the same respect for our religion as us.
Okay. So, would you figure it's better to fall in love with somebody the way that you've described, the exact same way you've described, but in the actual marriage itself rather than outside of the marriage? Because usually when this happens outside of the marriage, and I'm not talking from like a I don't know basis, like a theoretical basis, I've seen this happen with brothers and sisters. Like even in my 7 months, I've seen
I'm
this.
sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, I got cut off. Okay. The basic point that I'm getting to is, what is better? Is it better to be married and then fall in love and then experience almost that honeymoon phase? Or is it better to find it before and then get married? Because of the fact that usually today I see with brothers and sisters, and I've seen it. Like I haven't I'm not just talking. I've seen this. They've said, okay, we're going to proceed this way. And then they end up committing acts such as zina. So in the name of avoiding zina, which in the Quran, as we know, we should avoid zina entirely. Like it's not even just avoid zina. It's don't even go near zina. What's the line to falling in love with a person and then falling in love with a person after marriage? What's sort of the line that you would draw there?
You know, when it comes to falling in love before marriage, is like, first of all, I'm not gonna like invite a man over. I'm not gonna be talking to any man. you know, when I think about falling in love before marriage, I think about seeing someone falling in love with their characteristics that I can see without, you know, approaching them. Like, see how they, you know, go with daily life without, you know, being like, oh yeah, let's hang out, let's, like, I see some people, they'll invite brothers into their rooms, and I'm like, I'm sorry, no, thank you. But, but like, I also can see the point of like falling in love after marriage. I think that can also be really great as well for certain people, well, for the majority, really. I do feel that I'm a little bit different about how I personally like to get married, because I am wary. My parents, split up, and I think at first they were definitely the perfect match. Things they change, and it can you fall in love after marriage, before marriage, but I'm definitely very wary about getting into marriage because of things like that.
And all of us, of course, ask Allah to make it easy on all of us, as I don't think anybody in this panel right now is married. I wish I kind of found somebody that is married. That way we can get some perspectives on someone. But inshallah, on another episode, we'll bring someone up who is actually already married. Now, the thing about marriage, and the thing I find really good about Islam with marriage, is the fact that we often find ourselves talking about the serious things later into marriage. Like, and I've seen before as well. Serious things. These are things that you should be talking about before you even get married. But then people go through this honeymoon phase while they're dating quote unquote. They get married, that honeymoon phase is over, and now, oh no, things have gotten serious. We have 2 kids, and it turns out that we're not for each other, so therefore we're going to end up divorcing. And I've seen this case, but yeah, I like the way that Islam introduces things to relationships in general, because not only does it let you remain monogamous, at least as a woman, it lets you remain as monogamous, but overall, you talk about the serious things first and save that honeymoon phase for later. Save the actual love part for later. Right now, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about who are we as people, what do we value, what do we expect out of the marriage, what do I want you to do, what do you want me to do?
I agree. I think people think that it's so strict, but I think Islam really sets us up for success in marriage. I know before Islam, I thought that I was ready for marriage, and now looking back at it, I would have definitely ended in divorce. I think that in the West, we're really sort of indoctrinated this idea of love marriage. Mm-hmm. And while love is great, I think that I've really started to fall in love with the idea in Islam that marriage is actually a logical decision. Mm-hmm. You should marry somebody based on compatibility, based on your values. And obviously you need to be attracted to the person, but love can be built, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with this notion. Fahim, did you want to get any points across before I move on to my next topic?
Well, I did want to talk about falling in love before marriage and after marriage. So, like, there's two perspectives about it. The people who want to fall in love before marriage, that's it's like building a story and then delving, right into a bigger part of life, because it's in both sides. I'm not gonna lie, it's quite beautiful. Because before marriage, you fall in love, but of course you have restrictions in place, like you can't meet each other like physically, going to each other's bedrooms and that. You might be just texting along, all that sort of stuff. And then when the time comes, the future spouse might ask her man, to like ask the father for permission to marry, and of course the father has to accept it nevertheless because it's like he's just facilitating the marriage itself. But there's also one where after marriage the story actually begins, where even if it's even if it's an arranged marriage and like let's say you marry each other, there's you kind of like start a new journey or start like a new beginning of your life with your married one. You build that love, in terms of both deen and your characteristics, you know. And yeah, both sides are beautiful, but as long as they're like, you know, especially before marriage, as long as they're like, you know, a few restrictions here and there, that doesn't lead to zina, because, you know, it's not just to avoid zina, it's to not go near zina. And if it does kind of lead to that, then, you know, even a married life would be pretty much catastrophic in terms of, you know, being led to there. That's what I could say.
Yeah, and I feel, at least with why people often ask me, why is the father even involved in the first place? Why can't the woman sort of just decide for herself, right? And this is something that I like to argue against the point where we should just have the freedom to automatically choose without our father's or family's involvement. For one, the importance of family is very, very reinforced in Islam. At least I feel it's very reinforced in Islam. Like, family is something that's really, really important. Having a big family and growing a family is really important, and raising them Islamically is also really important. The reason I think that the father's involved, and I don't want to like interpret anything wrong, but it's because, at least as a man, when I see somebody and I look at their best interests, so if we're looking at the example of my own daughter, I see somebody through their own eyes. So like if I'm approached with this man and I meet him, just by him walking in the room, his mannerisms, his social cues, I can tell exactly what kind of person this is. I can tell if he's lying to me. I can tell certain things about him. And I think that's really good for at least getting fathers involved. I don't think it's good if they abuse that power of being involved in the marriage and being able to say yes or no. But I think a wali, a guardian, is really good to have, because, and especially if they're male, guard, which they have to be a male guardian. So when you have a male guardian and they meet you, I feel like it's much easier to look at somebody and see if they're lying and have your best interest for your daughter at heart. Because let's say Fahim comes up to me and is like, I want to marry your daughter, right? I'm going to ask him certain questions, and I'm going to ask him from an unbiased perspective. And as we established earlier, it wasn't actually me. I think it was Salam that demonstrated this, that women tend to be very emotional thinkers. So I feel like when getting a guardian involved, and especially if it's your own father, I know, Sophia, you'll probably have to find an imam or a wali to speak on your account. But I think when you have that second perspective of your own father or even a wali, things become much better for you, because they can give you a much more logical perspective and logical reasoning for marrying this person, other than just off of emotion. Because think about it, right? You meet this person and then you kind of get in your head like, oh, I'm going to marry this person, or this is what my life could look like with this person, or this is how I could see things. Now, I could be totally wrong about my perspective on this, but my perspective is that as a man, I can look at another man and be like, is this actually a good person to marry my daughter or not?
I definitely agree. I think that, like, at the end of the day, women are emotional, and, like, say I met this really attractive doctor. Okay, he's really attractive. He's got a great job. So obviously, already I'm like, oh, I want his qualities to be great. And so I'm gonna think the best of him and sort of push myself biased towards thinking better of him, because I already like those qualities about him. I think men know men best. And as we say, like, the husbands are supposed to have protective jealousy over the wives. Who has protective jealousy over the women before the husband? It's the fathers and the brothers, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and
I would have to agree. Like, I have the most amazing father, and, you know, he's very protective of me, even though I'm 18, you know. He's always like, oh, watch how you drive, blah, blah, blah. And I would not expect anyone else to pick a better person for me other than my father. I would not expect anyone else to be more protective than me, except for my father, and, you know, have the best interest for me. And I'm very emotional. I'm a very emotional person. I actually have a disorder that makes me even more emotional. So, you know, it's like, yeah, I still want my father to be someone who's very much so active when it comes to me getting married.
And, you know, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, of course, make things easy for you. Again, yes, as I do believe that a man knows another man best, and we should reinforce this idea overall. Now, Fahim, I just want to confirm with you, you also feel this way, right? Like, you can look at another man and be like, I know if this is a genuinely good person or not. Because me and you, of course, we're men. We know the way we think. Of course, I've seen my own case before I was a revert to Islam, I used to be a very different person. I wasn't a person of temptation, but there was actually a person I was talking to at the time. And even though this person was religious, as being a person in the position of a kafir, trying to get with who's not a kafir, I didn't care. At the end of the day, I really didn't care if she was a Muslim. I didn't care if she's a Christian. I didn't care if she was anything. But in her perspective, she does care because that is her religion. That's her beliefs. But to me, that didn't matter. Well, of course now it does matter, but it didn't matter. And when you if I were to go to her dad and say I'm a kafir, he'd be like, out of this house, get out of my house. That's why I think those kind of decisions are very important for the father to make, because me and this person were talking, but if I were to get involved with the father, he would have immediately went like, get out of my house.
100%.
Something I want to add for that, being that, I'm a revert, is like, that's the one thing I am worried about, because my father, he's a Christian, and me looking to be married to another Muslim, I would be afraid that he would be like, oh, get out, you're not a Christian. I want my daughter to be Christian and marry a Christian man, and that's something I do worry about as a revert, and that is why I probably do have a little bit more of a liberal view on relationships.
Just say this first, because this is very important. Islamically, your wali has to be Muslim. So what I would recommend for you is, at least if you find somebody, have your father still talk to that person, but also have him talk to your wali. Now, wali can be even an imam from a masjid. You go talk to the imam, or you go approach a sister to then go to talk to the imam. You talk to the imam, and then that imam can become your wali or your guardian. And this, of course, is Islamically required. And if you're looking into marriage, that's what I would suggest for you. No.
And that's understandable. Like, yeah, but basically the masjids where I'm from are very, very shady. They're known to treat sisters very, suspiciously, and so it's just like I don't even have like an imam or anyone I can necessarily go to outside of my college's Muslim association.
Yeah, I would suggest.
That's why I'm like I gotta wait. I gotta wait till I get somewhere that's less shady.
Okay. Because of course you want to find someone with your best interests at heart. That's why I said you should go through your father first, and then go to an actual wali to say, hey, there's this brother.
Inshallah, he will find, but it probably won't happen.
Of course, we're reverts in here. Actually, is Fahim, are you born Muslim?
Yeah, I'm born Muslim.
All right. I want to talk about the topic of Islamophobia. Now, as a revert, I experienced a lot of Islamophobia, a lot of it. And I didn't kind of notice what Islamophobia was before I actually became a Muslim and experienced Islamophobia. Now, for how long it's been around? It's been around for years and years and years and years. But, of course, do we have any stories, or do you have any experiences with Islamophobia that you see in the West? Because I'm pretty sure we all live in the West here.
The story starts when I turned 15 or 16, something like that. So it wasn't long ago. Before that, I wasn't like a proper concentrated Muslim. So I was born Muslim, Alhamdulillah, I'm a Sunni Muslim who was born into a very like Muslim environment. My parents are all Hanafi, and I'm kind of studying into the fiqh of things. So like it's either between Shafi'i or Hanafi. But yeah, I wasn't that religious back then, so I couldn't realize it. So since I was born in like a Western country, I was born Italian, of course. So since I was born in a Western country, I didn't kind of like practice Islam as much as I did, because most 10-year-olds at the time like would be like in top of the salahs, they would fast, be mature as a person. When I became 10, I wasn't that type of guy, so I didn't experience it. But when I started to become 15 or 16, and I was like, you know what, I need to start getting on Deen. Most of my friends, I don't know, they don't even know if they're Muslim or not, but they're like getting into a haram relationship, but Allah's the judge, they'll be judging that. When I started to get into religion, the environment just changed dramatically. It's the mainstream media getting involved, into people's minds, and there's like a spiral of misinformation that makes them view me different. So like, of course, there'll be like jokes, in their terms, there'll be like jokes about me being a terrorist, or you know, what you call it, like I just bomb a school, or bomb. I'm just here to bomb a college. It happens sometimes, but like most of the stuff of Islamophobia happens mostly in social media so far. The stuff that happened in college, that was mostly minimal because there were actual people to safeguard and take it out quickly. Whereas if it happened on socials, or if it happened on, let's say, Snapchat or Instagram or even TikTok at this point, there's like many Christian preachers, or there's many like people who claim they're preachers, but like they're just people from the comment section to just talk about mostly
Trust
Islamophobia.
me, those.
It happens, but sometimes you gotta firm it because you know that you're on the right path. You know that you have to. Your job in this earth while you're living is to teach people that Islam is not that. It's something different. It's a different perspective. And yeah, that's basically what I do. Most of the times, even if it's in the comment section of a TikTok or on YouTube, if a Christian were to reply to my comment about with a burst of Islamophobia, I'll be like, you know, it's it's not like that. We have similar links between religion, and we're all from like an Abrahamic faith. So yeah, it happens.
And, comments are comments, right? Like, when I was younger, I got like harshly bullied. I was bullied to like unimaginable almost lengths. It was crazy. And that almost prepared me to do this. Because now I could honestly get a million hate comments and I don't care. Like, honestly, if you guys are watching this right now, like, I'm probably getting hate comments as we speak right now. But if we're looking from a perspective of just getting hate comments, the only times it really, really gets to me is if it's from a Muslim. Like, the Muslims will leave hate comments. I'm like, guys, I'm on your side. And these guys will still comment because it's one of two things. Either they have a lot of pride and arrogance, and they're commenting to show that they're almost better. Now, I'm not saying that's every case, because some people are genuinely trying to like educate others. The other case is you've stated something and they simply disagree with you, but instead of disagreeing with you and bringing up another point, they're going to be rude and nonchalant to you. And I've seen that case even with Muslims. Like, we're guilty of this, even though we're supposed to be nice to each other and supposed to be not so harsh on each other. And another point that you brought up that I think was really good was education, the idea of education. Let's get into this, because honestly, this is something that I really have wanted to talk about for a long time. Nobody in the West is educated on history. I know this as a testimony. I know this. I was born here. I was raised here. Everything we learn in our history literally just involved one or two topics. I think I covered World War One from grade 1 to grade 6. We covered World War One, and that was not grade 1 to grade 6. Grade 1 to grade 12, I've covered World War One. That was it, and nobody knows their history. If I look, at least from a geographical perspective, if I ask someone to name 3 countries in my country, I'm very surprised if I even get Canada and Mexico. I'm even surprised if I get those two, because these are even in our own subcontinent. If I go to Saudi Arabia right now and I go to a child of 6 years old, he can at least name me 6 countries. Or even go to Europe, they can name me 6 countries. So I've noticed that even you said in the education systems, nobody's educated. Why does this apply to Islam? Of course, because people make comments about Islam without even knowing a single thing about it. And it honestly, it annoys me. Like, if you're going to talk about something, provide research and provide what you're actually talking about. Don't just sit here yapping about the terrorist this, Islamophobe this. They're not speaking from an educated standpoint. I'd love to talk to people openly who are coming to me from an educated standpoint. But most of the time, when I'm talking to people, at least in person, I notice that they have a lack of education in sort of some areas. If I'm talking from Europe, I've met people from Europe. The things they were learning in grade 6, I was learning in grade 9. To me, that's absolutely crazy of how backtracked our education system is, because people are developing a lot longer. Like, it's taking people a lot longer to actually develop and absorb information. And this also comes into play with distractions. If I have my phone out, right, and I'm scrolling through an app all day, like TikTok all day. If I'm scrolling through TikTok all day and I'm learning absolutely nothing, of course your brain is going to absorb no information. It's only going to absorb all that content you're watching. Anyways, that's kind of off topic from the topic of Islamophobia. I love to see the two sisters speak if they've experienced any Islamophobia or to what extent they experience Islamophobia in their day-to-day. If the Islamophobia impacts if they want to wear hijab or not wear hijab. Ladies, you have the floor.
Right, so I would like to start. So basically, a lot of the Islamophobia I have experienced has mostly come from in my family. And, being from the Midwest, being very traditional, my family is originally Mennonite. So, what they know is very small, very conservative. They don't know much because they weren't taught to know more, especially with them being older. I'm a late in life child, so, older people in my family, for a long time, my mom thought, all Muslims are terrorists. And when I started wearing hijab, she was like, she would go on about 9/11. And I'm like, Mom, that, not all Muslims are terrorists. And thankfully, she's learned a lot more and she's, been very moved by the knowledge she has gained about Islam. She's very supportive of me now. But like anytime I go to like family events, my uncle is always there. I'll say, oh, I don't eat pork. And he's like, well, the only people I know who do that are Muslims. And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure Jewish people don't eat pork either. But, it really comes from inside my family personally. I don't have anyone around me who's ever said anything other than my family. And, except for this one incident. I go to college. And, one day I go outside from one of my classes and, those Christian protesters who will go around, they were there that day. They came all the way from Florida. I live in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And, they're going on, and then they call all Muslims pedophiles. They call all of them rapists. And I'm just like, okay. Wow. And then he tells me I'm one of the good Muslims. And I'm like, okay. And then he tries to fist bump me. I'm like, no, thank you. But I mean, it's.
Do you see?
I don't care. I don't care what you say, but it was just like I think that was definitely the first time I was like, wow, that's a real Islamophobe. I mean, like, yeah, I get it from my family, but it's just like I ignore them. I've never had like hate come from else. That was a very uncomfortable situation for a lot of sisters on campus. So I stayed just in case any other sisters were approached because I'll stand up for myself, but a lot of these girls, they were scared. A lot of them were very uncomfortable. I even stood with one of them until their parents could come and get them.
And here's why I find this to be funny and ironic, because Christians have this message of preaching love and being loving and being forgiving, and then they'll go to a campus like that, call you pedophile, call you a rapist, just absolutely horrible things, harass you, cause people to basically stay with other people to make sure they're safe. So these guys, first, they're trying to say they're preaching a message of peace. But in order to attain that peace, to be one of us. Now, of course, people like to also say that Islam kind of reflects this. But several times, we are told not to attack unjustly, not to attack without reason, or attack in self-defense. We are supposed to only attack in self-defense. And again, I've been quoted on this on my video where people will try to misinterpret the Quran. And I like to say it's not all sunshines and rainbows. It's not supposed to be. Like, Christianity has almost made it so it's imbalanced. So they're trying to focus all on the peace side and nothing on the other side. This is a problem because when you take out, trying to take out all this anger and everything, right? And say it's all about forgiveness, you're opening the floodgates to someone then being like, okay, what constitutes me punching you in the face? Are you allowed to defend yourself now? Are you allowed to do anything about it now? Are you allowed to punch me back? Because we have this concept of an eye for an eye in Islam, right? If you punch me in the face, you better bet that I'm going to punch you back in the face. Anyways, this leads to the question of what causes more peace, what causes more harm, Islam or Christianity? And of course, I say that Islam causes way more peace than it does compared to Christianity. And of course, people bring to me examples. Oh, what about ISIS? What about jihad? And they don't even know what these mean. They don't even know what jihad means. They don't know what ISIS means. They don't know what Afghanistan means. I mean, I've even met soldiers that served in Afghanistan. They regretted almost everything they did because they were lied to several times. They were lied to by the U.S.
My brother was in Afghanistan, and I feel he doesn't talk about it, but he regrets it so much. And I don't feel like people who have not been to Afghanistan should have a say on it. That's, they don't understand because they haven't been there. You know nothing. You only know what the media tells you, and you take that as being the truth and the only truth.
I mean, we can even relate this to Israel-Palestine, right? I've met an IDF soldier. Like, I've actually met not an IDF soldier now, he's a Muslim, but an ex-IDF soldier. The reason he converted to Islam, Allahu Akbar, is because of what the IDF told him. He was like, oh, these guys, if you see that child, you're supposed to shoot him. He's basically been told that. Like, they were put in a classroom, sat down. It was like, if you see this child cross this line, shoot them in the head. I bring it back all to what causes peace and what doesn't cause peace. Now, people that actually read the Quran and actually study it, what is there, more violence or peace? I say that there's a balance. There's violence when there's violence on you, because people don't look at when verses were revealed. They'll take certain verses out of context, like the one saying to, I believe it's go kill the non-believers, right? But it doesn't quite literally mean go kill the non-believers. Like, just me randomly go out in the street and kill somebody and then I'm fine. This is not what Islam is preaching. What it's preaching is if this guy comes and tries to kill you, you have permission to act accordingly. It's the same thing with Quran 434, right? Where it starts with men are the protectors of women. At the end it says, beat your wife, right? Now this is not quite literally saying, me as a husband, if my wife doesn't do something, I have the obligation or I have the permission to beat her. This is a complete falsification of Islam. If we are looking at what that verse is actually saying, if we then relate it to, I believe it's in Al-Bukhari or Al-Muslim, it says you're supposed to do so in a way that doesn't leave a mark or doesn't cause complete physical harm. And what is that beating actually? That beating is, say, if she's doing something such as hurting your child or doing something where you need to act, where you need to, not you just all of a sudden want to just smack her. Again, it doesn't constitute behavior for just randomly beating your wife like people try to present it as. And of course, if you guys want to try rebuttaling to this, I think it's perfectly reasonable.
I agree.
I think it's reasonable. No reason why, someone just because they're your wife should get away with like the most horrendous acts. And I feel like, even the wife can reprimand the husband if he does something that's, that horrendous.
Yeah, that's cause for divorce right there. Again, I want you guys to know, if your husband is beating you, if your husband slaps you for no reason, this constitutes divorce. You could divorce him after that. And he can't take back his matter for something like that. He can't do anything to you for something like that. Again, Islam, it all goes back to what gives us more rights. Islam or Western ideology. Now, coming from a man, I actually, when I'm thinking about legal marriage in my country, I will never get legally married unless there's a prenup. If there's a prenup, I will definitely sign the prenup saying we will follow the rules that the Quran and the Sharia have put in place. And here's why. Because in most cases, a couple will love each other, right? And they love each other. They'll say, I'll never do anything to them, of course. And then one thing happens. And then another thing happens, another thing happens. And then all of a sudden, instead of being Allah Akbar this, SubhanAllah this, I love you for the sake of Allah this, it's my lawyer versus your lawyer. And then what it turns into, instead of having a divorce that's set by the Sharia, that's set to be fair, according to the Sharia, we have, in most cases, a lot of women will take almost everything from men or take a lot of percentages from men. Of course, my family was not involved in any kind of divorce like this. And I thank Allah for that, because if it was, it would have been really nasty for me. But I know that there's kids out there that have been through very, very nasty divorces where the father was left with basically nothing. And it's because it went through the legal system.
For me personally, my parents were never married, so thankfully I did not have to deal with that. But like, as you said, in America, I would never, get married without a prenup. I think I value both of our belongings as, being ours. There's no reason to split it up. It's ours. Our earnings are ours. So it doesn't make any sense for me, to, take someone else's belongings, even if they're, being treated terribly. That's still their belongings. You shouldn't leave someone in a terrible situation where they can't even provide for themselves.
I mean, Fahim, is there anything you'd like to add on to what I said?
Yeah, I agree that there should be a fair relationship even before marriage. There should be like a pre-map of things. So you just don't get married like at random time without any planning whatsoever. It's about firstly if you like each other. Secondly, if you have the enough resources that you could provide within the marriage. And thirdly, it's not just getting onto like what if it doesn't work? You know, what if I should get into a divorce? You know, you just have to hope for the best. You know, pray to God that it works out, and you know, just let it be. You know, because as you know, we don't know the future of your of a marriage that you're going through. Only Allah knows what's gonna be the best for you. So yeah, it's good to have like a pre-planning of things, but also remember that Allah is the best of planners, and yeah, you just have to let it be sometimes.
Yeah, that was a really good thing to add on there. The next thing that I want to get into, of course, it's more positive than Islamophobia. So I want to get into Revert stories. Now, I myself am not going to tell mine. I'm going to tell mine when the time is right. I'm going to tell mine when I have a provided audience for it. In fact, I might go to Istanbul. I might tell it there. But I know that we have two Reverts on our panel. I know, Fahim, you can speak almost as if, what's the moment that you sort of started taking your deen seriously and started really getting into it? But of course, is there anybody that would like to start this off?
I guess I can go. So basically, I'm born and raised in Canada. My family is all like born and raised in Canada. My family is Catholic for the most part. My dad's side of the family is very strict Catholic. My mom kind of bounced back and forth. I think she's Jehovah's Witness actually now. But they're definitely not Islam friendly. But I was introduced to Islam actually by somebody that I started dating. And I found myself, he was non-practicing at the time, and he became really sick, and he basically became practicing over the course of a few years. And I found that as he became practicing, I became really dark. And I think it's known that people who are like kafir were affected by that light. And I became a really, really toxic person. I was very angry. I actually became very like clinically depressed. And I was having really violent thoughts, and I was just really like, I felt like nothing in my life could go right. Like everything was just awful. And he kept telling me, come to God, like there's a lot of peace here. And I just never felt like I had enough evidence to believe in God. I was a person that felt like I needed to see it to believe it, kind of thing. And I basically just ended up like kind of hitting rock bottom. And it sounds so like magical, but I was walking down the street one night and I was crying, and I just looked up and I said, "Can you please give me something? Like, I'm begging you here. Like, I want to believe, but I need something to go off of. Like, can you please give me something that I can believe in?" And I kid you not, a week later, I realized that all of my depression was gone, and I never had another violent thought after that. And so I felt like, I couldn't deny that. So I decided to sort of accept Islam and start sort of, living in that way. And then 2 months later, I said my shahada and I put the hijab on and I started praying. And that same week, I got a new job that I had been looking for months for. And I also got a new apartment that I had also been asking for 5 months, because the one downstairs, there's a lot of issues with like flooding and stuff. And I just, like, my life became 1,000 times better after I came to Islam.
I'm not going to get into my Revert story. Mine is almost pretty similar to that. We could talk about that after the podcast is done filming. But I remember one specific thing, because, and I've recorded this verse down. Now, when I was reading the Quran, I went through almost the entire thing. I didn't have to go through the entire thing to completely revert to Islam. The night before I reverted to Islam, I read Ad-Duha, which is 93 of the Quran. And the specific verse that stuck out to me, and this was the night before I reverted, was وَوَجَدَكَ إِلَّا فَأَوْنَا, which is, Allah has found you lost and He has guided you.
SubhanAllah.
That with me, like, that's stuck with me until even today and past today. But yeah, that was just something I wanted to share before, of course, we move on. Unless you, of course, wanted to say anything else. So
No, I'm good pretty much. I just think that there's so many things that I've realized since coming to Islam, like even minor things. Like I used to have crippling anxiety, and it didn't go away right away. But over the course of the last few months, like it's completely gone. And I find myself more caring, more generous, and I've lost the capacity to get angry, which I think is really amazing.
all right. Sophia, is there anything that you wanted to get into regarding your Revert story?
Yeah, so my Revert story is pretty silly, as I've mentioned before. So I was about 14 years old on Instagram. I don't remember what was happening. I got into an argument, and this Muslim dude, he started bullying, and then later on he would message me, and I don't know what, but we made up, and we became friends. And I just, I would ask questions, and he would tell me, he would mention Islam. And I was like, I know nothing about Islam, because I was born into the Mennonite church and raised Methodist. And so, I just had a very an idea of Islam. I didn't know much about it, didn't inherently think anything bad of it, just, uneducated about it. And so through him, I would, discover my faith, and I would convert within maybe 2 months of meeting him. And while I no longer talk to him because, I would, like to keep my distance from men, to practice Islam, as it should be. I just, because of him is why I've found Allah. And since then, I have found a lot of peace, as you've said you have. I was clinically depressed before as well. I've spent time in a mental hospital. I have a lot of mental illness before that is definitely calmed. It's not gone, but every day it does get better for me, and I've just never been this content with life. I find myself, even when I'm going through hard things, I'm like, wow, I'm actually happy for the first time in my life. I'm content. I don't think I need anything more other than Allah, and, to just live the way that I'm living, living as a servant of Allah.
SubhanAllah.
But yeah, yeah, finding Islam has been one of the biggest healers I have ever had, for all of, the things I've had going on mentally. I don't have to take my antidepressants anymore. I mean, I still have anxiety, but it's not as bad. I wouldn't be able to be on this call right now before I was introduced to Islam.
Wow.
I agree. I
I'm
always
very
say
thankful.
that I've never felt such peace in my soul and in my life before Islam.
Like, before this, I would have been like, wow, my life sucks. Everything's going wrong. And like, I hate my life. I'm so
Yeah.
depressed. And right now I'm like, yeah, things are bad, but I'm happy. I'm living. I'm alive. I'm very happy with life right now, even though things aren't the greatest.
SubhanAllah.
SubhanAllah. Inna as-sirat al-mustaqim. May Allah keep us on the straight path. Fahim, is there any point in your life, because of course you said earlier that you may have not been, as quote unquote good. Of course, in the eyes of Allah, it doesn't really matter how like knowledgeable you are, how great you are, how like true you are. All of us are going through an individual test at the end of the day, and I wanted to reference your individual test. When did you sort of click and realize I need to take this seriously, or did you look at anything else? What's sort of your story, even though you are a born Muslim?
So before there was a click, background context first. I was born into like a conservative household. Of course, I'm Asian. There is like a stereotype that South Asians are more strict, like especially the parents on their children. But for me, it was strict, but it wasn't strict on religion. It was more strict on education and your everyday living. Although my parents were mostly religious, in a sense that I do see them praying, I do see them fasting even before or during Ramadan, or even sometimes after, because there's like events where you could fast. I never really took it into account by myself, especially because I was a child back then. But even when I grew mature, like when I became 10, and most of the guys that I was friends with that are Muslim, I was never friends with girls. Because of course, there was the order for my parents that you should never be friends with a girl, and of course, I kind of was suspicious about it. And then, I kind of realized why. But I wasn't like fully into a sense where I realized about, I don't know, what my religion is about. Because when someone when someone wants to ask me what religion I'm in, if I'm a Christian or a Jew or anything, when I say I'm just Muslim, if there's like a thing where, your mind just blanks out, it's like, it's like it's saying to you, you actually don't know much about the religion, because you never really looked into it. And that wasn't even a clicking point, because while I was 11 or 12 at the time, I really was like lost, like very lost. Like I could count myself, like a non-Muslim, a person who's lost, you know, in their own thoughts, and they don't even know what to do. Like it wasn't like it wasn't like depression based. It was more for a person who's just thinking about what their life is really about. Like, is it just living and dying at this point? That type of stuff. Until when I was 15, and I got my first phone at the time, so I just I was very excited to like open up a social media account, or open up a Discord, open up an Instagram, and see what it's like. Until my parents were like, you can't judge me. I also installed Facebook, because why not? Because my parents had Facebook, and they sent me links, to like Islamic videos and stuff. I kind of saw like one perspective, but then on Instagram, how the algorithm works. They also started sending me like Islamic reels and stuff, on a For You page. And then I kind of started judging, about religion, or I kind of started judging about Islam in depth. Like, there's opinions of different scholars or different alims, or different sheikhs, saying like, this is the opinion of some um, for example, marriage, or this is another opinion of marriage, or this is the opinion of, fasting on these days, or there's another opinion of fasting on these days. This is where I kind of started to, delve into it. And then this is where I clicked that, I've been starting to get more busy being religious than I ever have been when I was 10 years old. When I was like wondering how our life, like, I was being lost and stuff. But now, it clicked, alhamdulillah. Um, when I turned 15, I kind of started becoming a bit serious. But of course, Allah is the best of judges. I wasn't that serious, but I was like exploring kind of in a bit. And then, 2023, February, I'm pretty sure. I think the exact day was, February the 17th, is where like my college started to like, host like a Jum'ah thing, attend Jum'ah. There's like apparently they prepared like a spare room for, people to attend and pray Jum'ah, because I never prayed Jum'ah at school. I never went to private prayers at school, because there was never a place to like pray. And then yeah, that's where I started to like get serious on prayer. And yeah, alhamdulillah, man's trying to grow a beard, follow the sunnah, and yeah, that's how I'm here right now.
MashaAllah. I think something with reverts and born Muslims is that the born Muslims, they don't understand just what they've been given, just what they've been born with. And sometimes they don't understand the importance of it until they get into later ages. Like you said, you were like, what, 12 to 15? This is still a young age. Like you got to realize you have a whole life in front of you. I'm almost referring to people that get into their late 20s and they're still Muslims, but they're still like almost lukewarm Muslims. They're not like serious about anything. It's fine being even a lukewarm Muslim. As long as you have your Shahada, you should be theoretically fine, as long as you're not transgressing beyond bounds. Now, when it comes to reverts versus born Muslims, I find that the advantage that reverts have is we had to actively go into it, find it. We had to make logical sense But when you're born with it, you have the advantage of being able to like learn Arabic while your body, well, not your body, while your mind is still absorbing information. Because when we're younger, we absorb information much quicker because we're introduced into this world and it's a new setting. So our brain is like, that's that, that's that, that's that, that's that. So learning things such as the languages, how to read the Quran is much easier at a younger age, much easier. But the advantage I'd say that the reverts get is the fact that when we look into Islam and we have a lot of iman, we generally absorb a lot of that information faster. I've been able to learn like a lot about Islam fast, but trust me, like I'm still pretty low. I'm still pretty low when it comes to the knowledge aspect of Islam. I've just started learning my Arabic, and honestly, I've never learned anything faster. Never. I've never absorbed this much information at once. But I can be someone who testifies to the fact that I find being a revert, it gives me advantage that I had to actively find the religion. I had to actively logically think about this, this, and this. I had an unbiased perspective when I was, but I still found Islam at the end of the day. Now, going based on what we said earlier, how do we feel about how people reflect Islam today? So not necessarily what Islam talks about, but how do we feel Muslims are doing as an ummah to reflect the teachings of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the word of Allah?
Me personally, I think it depends. I feel like a lot of younger Muslims are really getting into their deen. I think they're really starting to wake up and starting to practice, but I also feel like there's like this middle generation between the old and the younger who are just kind of lost still. Like, at least from what I'm seeing, there's people who are like older than me, but not that old, who are like, doing things that aren't really necessarily. But I have seen a lot more people around my age who are practicing the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Honestly, like I see a lot of the times we either have people that don't take it serious enough or people that take it too seriously. There's not like sort of a middle ground established, right, at least right now. I think there's going to be a middle ground. Now, what I mean by taking it too seriously is someone will just revert and then all of a sudden this guy's like, you have to have everything as like perfect. I'm not talking about, trying to strive to be the best you can be, and that's a bad thing. No, we should also try to strive to be the best we can be. Whether that's Islamically speaking or just speaking in general. And we should take Islam into almost everything that we have in our lives. Go ahead.
It's pretty funny that you say that, because I had someone tell me to be quiet. I'm a revert, and like, I know nothing because I'm I'm not actually Muslim the other day, and I was just like, okay, if you say so.
Yeah, well, when people say things like this, again, this doesn't come from a place of any sort of love for Allah. This comes from a place of arrogance. They're being arrogant when they're saying that. They're not, and this isn't something that Prophet Rasulullah SAW would preach. This isn't something he would preach. When you have pride and you have arrogance in your heart, it's said that you even have a mustard seed worth of pride in your heart, that you won't enter Jannah because of the fact that you think that everything you have, all that knowledge that you have, and even speaking to someone, like the way that person spoke to you, Allah was the one that gave him all of that knowledge in the first place. I want to make that abundantly clear. So nobody can go up to someone and say, you're not a Muslim, you're not doing this, or this right. Now, I can say you're not doing this or this right and provide you sources to tell you why you're not doing this thing right, but you have to do that still from a place of love and compassion, other than a place of look how right I am, look how knowledgeable I am. And I think that this is something that a lot of Muslims today get very distracted with, the whole debate part of it, the whole I want to be right part of it. It's almost a field to flex your intelligence other than a field of a way of life. Yeah, that's my interpretation of that. Do you guys want anything else onto that?
I think that my general experience is that the Ummah in person is very kind, unbelievably accepting, but online it's the complete opposite.
I mean,
Actually, this is probably going to be a little different from what you experienced, but actually, my experience on has been significantly nicer than in person. And that's not to say anything against any of the Muslims that I've met in, real life. I'm sure they're great people, but it's just like the way that I feel around them is not the way that I feel about the online community. I have feel so much love from the online community, especially the people who have joined the dawah.society Discord. You guys are such beautiful people, so polite, and you guys really motivate me to be a better Muslim. So, my personal experience is a little bit reversed than that, but like, I'm sure, the farther along I go and the more I travel, the more Muslims I will meet in person who are just so kind.
yeah. I mean, speaking of the Dawah Society Discord, the link is in the description. Of course, come and verify yourselves and join the Dawah Society Discord for the chance to be in a video. Of course, that's just me doing my shout out part. But I do want to move on to, of course, a Q&A. Okay. Now, with the Q&A, the questions will work like this. You guys can ask me something or I can ask you something. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A. In the Q&A, basically how it's going to work is we can all just ask each other questions. That's how Q&A works. Now, the first question I have for the sisters is, of course, do you feel oppressed? I need to know. I mean, I did a poll. I need to know, do you feel oppressed?
No.
Because a lot of the times now what we see is people want to make you seem so oppressed. And people will say you're oppressed, and it's often the liberal agenda that you guys are so oppressed by Islam and so oppressed to wear the hijab. Now,
Really not oppressed.
but what nobody asks you is, how do you feel? Do you feel oppressed?
If anything, Islam has freed me.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it here first. Sophia, would you like to add on to that?
I mean, I definitely feel a lot more free in Islam. I feel like I have a lot more rights in Islam. We're definitely protected in Islam more than I would say just by Western ideologies. Like, I feel like Islam has better interest in our rights than Western ideology does. And another thing is like, I've always been someone who's very modest, so it's not like it's a big change for me. It's just, I've always been someone who covers, and I don't think it's, oppressive to cover yourself. That's, nobody's gonna force you. You have the right in Islam to not be forced. Nobody can force you to do anything in Islam. It is between you and Allah.
I 100%.
So yeah, I mean, I feel really free.
So yeah, let's kind of piggyback off that. Since we're under the impression that somehow women that wear hijab are oppressed, how does the hijab make you guys feel?
I think that it makes me feel protected, and it actually puts me in touch with my femininity. I think a lot of us kind of feel like a princess, and the way that, like, because hijab is more than just covering your head, of course, it's the way that we cover our entire body, and I think that encouraging women to wear abayas and wear this flowy material, it really is able to put us in touch with our femininity.
And I'm gonna have to agree. There's something about, like, a lot of the clothing that we have that's just really makes you feel beautiful. There's so many different styles. You have access to so many different kinds of abayas, so many different kinds of modest clothing, so many different kinds of hijabs, and you can style it in so many ways. And when it's like, I don't know, when you're like flowy like that, or you have these ribbons and all that, it's kind of like, I don't know, it feels like you're a princess, and it just makes me feel really beautiful. And on top of that, I've always wrapped my hair. I am African American, and so for me, it's just like, I don't know, another layer of protecting my hair on top of, my modesty. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just protecting my hair. It's not a big deal.
I've also really fallen in love with the idea, and I think it really kind of makes us special in a way. I've fallen in love with the idea that your beauty is only for, like, your husband. Yes, your family can see you, but, like, it's for your husband. It's not like, why on earth should all of these men who genuinely, like, they don't care about me, they don't care about us, why did they get to see any part of me like that? And I think that makes it really, really special.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Yeah, I would have to agree. Like, and also another thing is just feeling beautiful for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not wearing hijab or niqab or, abaya to look pretty for someone else or to please someone else. I'm doing this to please myself, feel pretty for myself, probably my husband when I get one, and, to, please Allah. I don't care about anyone else or their opinions on how I look. I just want to feel beautiful, and, I want to be modest and protect my haya, and, just be the best version of myself. I don't care if I look pretty to someone else or not.
So true.
Now, with modern feminism, we're preached. Now, I want to reiterate on this podcast, nobody forces you to wear hijab. Nobody does. And anybody who does, the sin on them is actually worse than not wearing the hijab itself. Way worse. Now, when we are talking from a feminist perspective, and of course you guys might even know some of this, like, oh, you're so oppressed, why do you wear it, why do you do this or this? Now, I want you to look at almost the other perspective of this. Let's even take a feminist movie, for example, like the Barbie movie. How come there were no hijabis in the Barbie movie? How come? If it's based on choice and actually empowering yourself, then why don't we have a hijabi present in a movie like the Barbie movie, for example? Or a movie, or a feminist movie that has a woman wearing hijab? Because, as you guys said, it has made you feel empowered. So I find it almost hypocritical that there is no representation for hijabi women in the movies such as the Barbie movie, because of the fact that I think it's even more feminist that you guys get to choose what you want to wear and what you don't want to wear. In fact, let's look at how beauty is used in corporate industries. I saw this, and I remember, wallahi, I was disgusted by this. They had women dressed in crypto.com, like, basically two pieces. So they're in a bikini on live TV with, like, crypto.com. Like, at that point, you're basically admitting to yourself, first of all, female beauty is a powerful thing, and I'll admit that to myself as well. But you're basically admitting to themselves that we are going to use them as an object to then display our advertisements. And this was on a boxing event. So, like, millions of people are watching this anyways, and they're basically looking, they're saying to themselves, hey, I don't want to be objectified, right? But then they'll wear something like a company's logo on it, and then they'll say, oh, I'm not objectifying myself, I'm beautifying and expressing myself. Yet you're sitting there saying, I don't want to be objectified. If you don't want to be objectified, why are you then sitting there on stage with someone's company logo? And of course the company knows people are going to pay attention to that, especially if you're a pretty woman. If you're a pretty woman and someone's looking at you and you know someone's going to pay attention to that, why are you being used as nothing but this company's logo? And of course this company doesn't care about them at all. This company is not, like, devoted to enlighten their experiences in life, or even dedicated to providing them with anything valuable. They're just like, okay, here, take some money. I want you to show yourself in a bikini with our logo on it. I think it's absolutely disgusting in this world that the fact that almost nakedness is advertised. Even if you look at the opposite, if you go to even public pools, I've seen this. If you go to public pools, how come it's hijab is banned there? Like, the whole
I
idea.
do have something I want.
Okay, I'll let you out on it in a second, but let me reinforce this with a question. How come there's a feminist ideal of being able to choose what you wear and that you shouldn't be objectified, yet when a woman decides to wear hijab, that's when things go south. That's when things become a case of oppression. I rest my case there. Do you want to speak?
And I do agree with a lot of what you said, but I would also like to state that there are a lot of people in the modeling industry, a lot of people in the fashion industry and in cosmetics who are trafficked, who are being groomed by their parents into this kind of industry. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like we need to acknowledge that a lot of these women, they were taught that that's how things should be. and they don't know anything other than that. And that's why it's very important to protect the women in your life, to prevent them from being put in a position where they're being, used for money in inappropriate ways.
And that's why I'm saying to that, Islam is the answer to that. Because if you're an actual Islamic parent, an actual parent that follows Islam, that's not going to happen. If you're a parent, sure, that says I'm Muslim, but then does that. Like, what constitutes you being something other than a dayuth at that point? You're a dayuth to your own child. You're then saying to your child, hey, I want you to go in this model industry and you have to do it. No. Like, this is not something that's Islamic. Of course, there's a different case. Let's say, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's think of like a perfume advertisement, and you have a hijabi in the perfume advertisement. Fine, sure, something like that where it's innocent. But if we're looking at the modeling industry as a whole, what they bank on is the fact that people have to look perfect. They have to be perfect. They have to like have this perfect version of themselves. So to the point where people are like looking at their eyebrows, a little minuscule amount of their eyebrow, and they're like plucking it, and they're trying to find.
Right.
They're trying to beautify themselves so much with makeup, or even to the point where they're getting plastic surgery. My argument is that it's actually more oppressive that people think they have to be perfect and have to compare themselves to others other than wearing a hijab, and then you don't compare yourself to others at that point. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, sisters, and of course I don't wear hijab because, I'm a man. I cover my aura, of course. I try to do my best. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's more oppressive that people try to basically use women and use women's emotions to make a product and sell that product. For an example, a makeup line. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, sisters. You have the floor on that.
I think you're absolutely right. And I do remember a video that I watched of a speaker, and he said it so much more beautifully. But basically what he was saying was like, you're either, in Islam, you're following what has been told to us, the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you're following the rules of society. So in both ways, you're kind of being controlled by something. So which is better? Following your creator or following a society that's breaking you down and diminishing you and making you feel like less than if you don't meet the standard?
And, the thing is, these industries, the only thing they really have in mind is to feed on insecurities, to sell products, to sell this idea of, sensuality and extravagance. They're just trying to sell like a lifestyle, a look, and just for their gain. And it really does hurt a lot of women. And it's starting to seep into our children.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're indoctrinated from such a young age to believe certain things. And even speaking as like a male, right? Like, it's not like, oh, you wear hijab, so it's correct, right? You guys are reverts. You're still wearing hijab. Like, I don't get the point of the reason it's oppression is because they've been indoctrinated from such a young age to believe a certain thing. Now, of course, there's women that are Muslims and they don't wear hijab. Of course, may Allah preserve them, guide them to wear the hijab eventually, because it is something that is mandatory. There's no getting around it. It's been set mandatory by Allah. That being said, nobody can say you wear hijab and you can't take it off. Nobody can really say this. Of course, when you're raising your kids, I would encourage it. Encourage your daughter to wear it, but you don't say to your daughter, I'm going to do something to you, I'm going to harm you in any way if you take off this hijab, because I know this happens in the world. Or even with the governments. Certain governments, I don't want to mention them by name, but certain governments do this as well, and that's also wrong. Islamically, forcing your religion and forcing beliefs upon somebody, it's not Islamically correct, especially with the hijab. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Well, not necessarily a question, but to end it off, I do want to say that Salahuddin al-Ayyubi did say that if you do want to destroy a nation without causing any wars, then you shall introduce nudity to the younger generation. That's all I could say.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if we're looking at Saladin, if we're looking at his character, I think he reflects Islam really well. And here's why. When he retook Jerusalem, he didn't look at all the Christians in Jerusalem and be like, I want your head gone, your head gone, your head gone, your head gone. Even though he was a leader and he very much could have done it, what he responded with was letting them live and forgiveness. Even though they had killed other Muslims, they'd been a clear enemy of Islam. After the treaty was said and done, after he took Jerusalem, he didn't then proceed to execute it, like everybody. He didn't proceed to kill anybody unjustly, which is exactly what's reinforced in Islam. If you need to act in self-defense or conquer in self-defense, it's fine if you do this. That's just based on Saladin's character. If you guys have any more questions for me, of course, go ahead. I don't have any more questions for the sisters. That's all I really wanted to get into.
Right, okay, so one question I did have was ketchup on shawarma. What about that?
Okay, so if you go to our rules tab in our Discord, it says that if you like ketchup on shawarma, leave. You're not welcome in my Discord server. You know how I said we're inclusive to everybody? If you like ketchup and shawarma, leave. Respectfully.
All right, you're
Leave
not
my
welcome
server.
here. I'm sorry.
Respectfully, if you like ketchup and shawarma, I will assassinate you.
You ate a ketchup sandwich before this stream started. I was here.
Why would I eat bland bread?
All right. This has been a really good discussion. I mean, up until this point. No. We're fine. This has been a really good discussion that we've had today. We've covered basically everything that I wanted to cover for now. Just for reference for future streams, any of you can come back if you want to and restate your points or state new points. You guys are always welcome to come back. I want to say thank you to my guests that appeared today. Of course, if you want to be featured on this podcast or have a chance to be featured on this podcast, join up the Discord server. The link is in the description. The link is in my bios. Follow up Dawah Society on all platforms. I have a TikTok, Instagram, and a YouTube. And of course, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.